Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Or if you're watching on our new Blue Collar Leadership YouTube channel, you're watching as part of the Real People Getting Real Results. I got another one of those real people who's getting real results with me today, my friend Felipe Engineer. And welcome to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast, Felipe.
Mac, thank you so much for having me on the show. It is so amazing to see what you're doing with this show and all the cool stuff you've got going on since the last time we got to hang out.
Yeah, man, you interviewed me, and then I think you interviewed me and Rhea together 2 different times on your show. And what's the name of your show, real quick? Say it like you say it when you open up. I love it.
The EBFC show, the Easier, Better for Construction podcast, where I bring in people from in and around the construction industry to make the lives of construction workers easier and better.
I like it, man. You sound like the Wolfman Jack back in the day on the radio show. So it's awesome. But when you interviewed us, you actually inspired us because you use StreamYard, this platform we're using, and helped us understand how simple and good this platform is. So you inspired us to start making a bunch of videos. So we started the Blue Collar Leadership YouTube channel, and we started doing our Blue Collar Leadership Academy videos, online training series. All that was inspired by Felipe Engineer. So I want to back up from all of that inspiring you did for us, but just to ask you, like I do all of our guests, how do we know each other? How did you come across me, or how did all that work?
Yeah, so the way I do remember, yeah, my memory's pretty good. I don't even need to take another sip of coffee, Mac. That's how good my memory is.
I love you.
I was pretty active on social media, and I noticed a couple of my friends, we call our change makers tribe, and I'll talk about what change makers are at some point, had mentioned one of your books. I thought, if this friend is mentioning this book, this might be something worth looking into. So I looked into it on LinkedIn and started following your content. I was like, Mac's story, Rhea's story. I look at these folks, man, they've got a following, they've got consistent messaging. I was like, I could learn something from these people. I was like, there's something to learn. So I looked at your website, and I love how you have your website laid out and just make it so clear and so simple, because a lot of people overcomplicate stuff. I even have I'm working with a marketing person in our volunteer group for the Lean Construction Institute. Her name's Candace. Shout out to Candace. And Candace is like, Felipe, you overcomplicate stuff. I was like, Candace, you're so right. I do. And Mac had it just laid out. So I picked up Kaizen Leadership, Mac, read through that. And I think I started messaging and engaging with your content. And the next thing I knew, you were coming on my show. And then we got to formally talk on the show. And then fast forward, that relationship just spiraled. And even before you came on my show, Mac is one of those people like myself that puts our phone numbers out there into the ethos so that people can call us. And I think I called Mac about something about his book and Kaizen Leadership. And we must have talked on the phone for a good 3 hours. Now, just before this show started, and there's Mac's phone number right there. He's not playing around. Just before the show started, Rhea was like, Mac, don't forget, you got something to do today. And don't be talking to Felipe for 3 hours, because we know that can happen, Mac. Rhea's not saying that because she just wants to hear herself talk, even though she's got a great voice and accent as well, like you do. But she's saying it because she knows that you and I can talk quite a bit.
Yeah, and she's the one that's responsible for the website design. I don't give any credit for that. She's done a phenomenal job with all of our websites. We got several of them, but yeah, she's done a great job with that. And man, yeah, you invited us on, and we got. I mean, we had a fun time talking on your show with you. We think a lot of you, and then you somehow after the show, I think you were able to influence us to come up and talk at the LCI conference in in Detroit, right?
Beautiful Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, the beautiful, what do they call it? The Motor City. So we got to, I volunteer quite a bit. As people that know me know, I have a hard time saying no to things, especially if it's going to help and benefit other people. And I'm on this volunteer group for the Lean Construction Institute, and the chair at the time, they change the chair every year depending on what city hosts.
Yeah.
Jeff said, we're looking at ideas for speakers. And I was like, this list is good and there's nothing wrong with these speakers, but what about Mac Story? And then Jeff was like, oh my God, he's like a huge Mac Story fan. He probably almost fainted when he met you, Mac, and he just won't admit it. So Jeff, you're listening to the show. I know that you fainted, and then Mac probably had to pick you up off the ground when you met him. So yeah, we talked about having you on, and it was an instantaneous. Everybody started buzzing, and they said a lot of people on that committee follow your content and have read your books, and so it was like a no-brainer, yes. And you made LCI an offer they couldn't refuse, and you were there, opening up, keynote speaker. It was amazing. I got to also like selfishly hang out with you more, which was like super big plus. I was like doing that.
Well, we got to hang out with you. That was the big plus. We got to meet you, hang out.
Yeah, we got to have a lot of fun at that conference. A lot of stuff changed after that, as far as like skilling up and doubling down on leadership. And Mac, I ended up getting into some conversations with some folks. I interviewed somebody who's also a follower of John C. Maxwell, and I picked up his book on the laws of leadership. And I was like, oh, this is why Mac's like this. Oh, this is why. Like the whole time I'm reading the book, I kept thinking about you and the way that you show up and act and help people through these laws of leadership, which I think are phenomenal laws. And it's on my list of books to review with my son, who's now 14, and he's still asleep. I'm looking at the time, like that kid's still sleeping right now. He's not awake yet.
Yeah, where are you at? People probably know we're in Georgia, so we're 3 hours ahead of you. Because where are you at? I know you're out in California someplace.
You're in the future. I'm in the greater Sacramento area, in the beautiful EBFC show studios, where we're broadcasting, live for the show. And I really like too that the more that we talked and we saw how easy things were. And I'm a person that likes to go do things. So like I'll read a book and then go try it. And then when you had you on the show and you saw how easy it was to make videos, you're like, you probably said something like, gosh darn it, we should just start making videos. And then the next thing I know, we're coming onto this show and you're like, I make lots of videos. I'm doing lots of training. It's super easy. And it is very easy, people. The thing is, just go do something, get started. When you're inspired, when inspiration hits you, don't let it go. Take action on it, just like Mac does. Be a leader of yourself. That's one of the laws of leadership, is you've got to be able to follow your own direction. Isn't that right, Mac?
That's right. And lucky for me, I got Rhea, because Rhea does most of the video stuff, and especially the editing part, all the software side of it and all that stuff. She's always running these shows in the background. Every now and then she gets on and does some talking and interviewing, but usually it's me, because that's the thing. All of the people that we have on the Real People Getting Real Results series, they're all people I know somehow, directly or indirectly, through my content, or most of them I've talked to it, at least before they get on the show. I've talked to them at least once, but some of them, like you, I've talked to multiple times. So you've had quite a growth journey. When did we're gonna talk about all your lean Scrum stuff too. We're gonna definitely get into that. I just like to try to open up when I can stay on task, to talk a little bit about a person's personal growth, the character side, and then talk about the competency side, which is really what you do a lot of, and you travel all around the world speaking about that. So we're definitely going to talk about that. But when did your intentional personal growth journey start? And if you can remember which book, maybe. I don't. Some people remember, some people don't.
Yeah, I think most people that know me, they think I just fell out of heaven just like this, all ready to rock and roll, and that's just not the case. I recently had the joy of spending time with my parents this weekend, and they were abuzz with how much growth and change I've had over the years. I'm now 44 times around the sun. For those people tracking, how old is that guy? How old is that dashingly good-looking guy? 44. And at the time of the recording of this video. And I'd say that I started off as a extremely shy kid. Did not talk that much. And I think for me, it started probably in high school. I'm going to give the credit to my dad again and my mom. My mom gets the credit, and she was just actually accusing me of not giving her enough credit on my podcast. So, Mom,
well, here you go.
Mother's Day is coming up, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. This one's for you. So my parents in high school, my dad's he's a reader, and he likes to read, and he was working. Both of my parents are blue collar, so we knew what books were, right? So we read, and my dad had a library downstairs, and one day, Mac, this book shows up where I'm gonna find it, like super, like I know he staged it for me to find it, but not like, hey son, you need to read this. And it was the seven, the book, Mac.
Oh, 7 Habits.
The 7 Habits book by Covey.
Yep.
So the 7 Habits book was out.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Actually the first book that I was ever introduced to that changed my life.
Yeah, so I read. So look at that. Another thing we have in common. So that book's out in a place where it's auspicious, and I find it, and I'm like reading this book. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. Right. And so I don't read it. So later sometime, my dad's like, hey, did you see that book? I was like, was there a book out? Like, he was pretending like he couldn't find the book. What a crafty beaver that dad was. So eventually I read the book, and I was like, these things are actually really good. Like, it seems there's a pattern that if you put into play, you can have a totally different type of life, which a lot of people wonder, like, how hard change is and how do you implement it? So I think that moment with that book, in that nice, gentle, nudging way, put me on a path to start changing. And I became, much more extroverted. Now, fast forward to in my professional career, I was trained as an electrical engineer. I got my master's in business, and I have started and run over 6 companies, and currently just 4. That's it. And then I volunteer with the Lean Construction Institute in 2 capacities, one at the national level and one at the local level as chair. And I think, Mac, that every opportunity where I've been able to come in and volunteer, like I'll just take into the lean area, because I think your audience will like this. So some years ago, I got to get involved with using lean things based on a book that I read. Now, it wasn't a Covey book, it's a different book, but from there, I got to volunteer and start experimenting with the things that I was doing. And that put me into a leadership role. And I've never not been. Now, one of my friends, Mac, shout out to Vic, says that sometimes leadership is more of a calling that you answer than something that you reach for actively. It kind of just comes to you at the right time, and you just take it out. People can take or leave that they want. That's just one man's opinion, not mine. That's Vic's opinion. And Vic says that it's obvious that the calling has come to me, and I've answered the call. So as I volunteered and played with things, that really changed my trajectory to the way that I show up as a leader, how I show up in, like, even in my own family. Like, the stuff works inside of work and it works professionally. And I think that consistency, like some people say, like, you got to have a different face for work or home. And I'm just too damn lazy, Mac, to have a different face. So I just show up the same way everywhere I go.
That's awesome. Hey, when you got the kind of character you can show up the same way everywhere, that's a good kind of character to have, because a lot of people are 2-faced, 12-faced, 20-faced. They different people in different places for different reasons.
They don't know how much energy that takes. So, being volunteering as a leader and being responsible for other human beings really changes how you show up and operate. And I even tell my son, I said, I was pretty okay in management in the construction industry. And then after he was born, he elevated my game, because that kid, stubborn, smart, takes after his father. I was like, very hard to manage. So that kid needed to be led. So I had to up my game so that I could show up and lead. And he's like, you always do somehow get me to do what you want. I was like, yeah, son. That's good.
Is that the way you do it?
Yeah, that's the way I do it. We were just talking about it last night. He said, I'm starting to learn how to turn it on like you. And I was like, no, you're about the right age. Yeah. And
how old now?
He's 14 now.
Yeah.
And he said he might, if he gets out of bed at some point, he might come strolling down here and make a camera, wave to the camera at some point. But there's no promise that a teenage kid can wake up before a decent time of day. For now.
Yeah, man. So that's awesome. So I see you're talking about being a leader in your professional world and a little bit about your personal world, but I know where you work. I see the Boldt logo back there behind you. Tell me and the audience, what do you do with Boldt, and then that'll lead us into also your book and what you do with Scrum. But what you do with Boldt, and what is Boldt?
Yeah, I think people that work at Boldt would love to hear this answer, because people often wonder, like, what do you do? So I was even this is true. Boldt is a general contractor. We do work all over the United States, including Alaska, on occasion.
Okay.
And, so I've got a friend right now even working in Florida. So we've got work from Florida to California. I'm sitting here in California. I've got 22 offices. We do general contracting, design build, healthcare construction, industrial construction, modular construction, industrialized construction is the way they like to say it. We have some design-based services. So we'd like to build big stuff. We do everything except for residential. That's the one thing we don't do. And what I love about what I do at the Boldt Company, so I'm a director at the Boldt Company. I get to help project teams from the time the client thinks that a building will be a solution to a problem that they're having, all the way through successful opening of that project and everything in between, with the heavy emphasis on using lean leadership and tools like agile tools, my favorite, like Scrum or last limiter system production controls, or all the quality tools that people recognize that Deming used, like spaghetti diagrams or value stream mapping. A lot of stuff that people in manufacturing just take for granted. People in construction, we're just waking up to what those tools are now. So I tell people, like, there's over 50 lean tools that you can use, probably closer to 100. And a lot of them are based on simple concepts and tools. And that, I was a fan of the Boldt Company way long time ago when I was first getting started with lean, because they are a company that has a culture that likes to experiment. They like to try new things.
Yeah.
And then they're not afraid to share their failures. So I read a white paper many years ago about a company, Boldt, was implementing TAK planning, TAKT, which in manufacturing is really common. It's about queue times, not necessarily queue times, but it's about customer demand and working towards single piece flow and putting things on a cycle, which is like unheard of in construction. We have a lot of variability. And so I was reading this white paper, Mac, and would you believe that they tried to use TAKT on the exterior skin to schedule some work on an exterior skin remodel, and it failed over 14 times. And they're writing about this in the research paper, and it's like, but on the 15th or 16th time, it worked. And when it worked, it dramatically transformed the pace, the speed, and the quality. And I thought to myself, like, hey, I don't know if I had the stomach to go 14 times of like not getting it. But everything was sound. Like the approach was sound, and some of the things that they were trying to overcome were some people side. It's like people trusting something new. And so that's what I really love about working at Boldt. And I'm currently working on almost $1 billion+ worth of projects right now. One of them is over $1 billion, but the part that I'm working on is less than. So I can't call myself the multi-billion-dollar man yet. As we get further into construction, I will change.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. So I'm on projects from the Sacramento area to the Bay in San Francisco proper. That's what I'm doing these days. And when I first started, I used to travel all over the country. So I've got stories for days on leadership examples and activities. And I was just talking to people this week in the UK. I was doing a live webinar with some people in the UK talking about a case study example from the heart of the Midwest in Oklahoma City, and had some examples from there. And also, of course, from California, the great state, the Golden State, Mac. Don't you forget it.
Hey, I've been to California a lot of times. Y'all got some pretty country out there, man, and some good weather down in San Diego.
Yeah, we do. That we do.
Yeah. So
it was where my wife and I actually got married, in San Diego, Mac. We loved it so much.
Yeah, that's outstanding, man. So you guys, one thing you said, you were talking about people will know what you do there, and you explained, from basically from concept to completion, basically C to C, but in another not the SEA, but the letter C, right? C to C.
Yeah, with a heavy focus on operations.
Yeah, and
from folks in corporate in the company that said, something like you and I report to somebody who works inside of the corporate group, and I've got dotted line reporting to. I just tell everybody, like, it's really just a dotted line to the whole company. Like if you need something, just call. Like I could open up my Teams and show you like messages from people across different regions asking for help in different ways, and help is coming. Like we should have. I love a culture of being able to call and reach out and get help. And I even called somebody yesterday, like 4:00 my time. They're on your time, so I think it was almost like 8:00. I can't do the math. It was late.
Yeah.
It was late, and they were still helping me. So people, even at Boldt, across different operating groups, help me at all times of the day. Sometimes I need help too, Mac.
Yeah. Hey, we all do, and that's something about servant leadership. You just said it. I'm gonna try and put a different spin on it, but servant leadership. If you're a servant leader, you do have a dotted line to everybody because you basically working for everybody, and it doesn't matter what your position or title is. It could be an entry level frontline construction worker could have a dotted line to everybody. It could be and should be the top leaders have a dotted line to everybody. There ain't no, you got to follow the chain of command, all this kind of stuff. It's like who can help somebody make it happen and who can remove obstacles and who can be a cheerleader, all that kind of stuff. But getting back to what you do from beginning to end, you really is habit 2 from the 7 habits. Begin with the end in mind. That's what you're trying to help everybody do, especially from the very beginning, is to begin with the end in mind. And when you understand lean and the lean principles and leadership principles, you can be much more effective at beginning with the end in mind. So you can cut out a lot of waste, save a lot of time, and save a lot of headaches, and reduce stress and reduce frustration. And that's what you do with your book I got here.
Oh, snap.
Construction Scrum. I had to say I'm only about halfway through it. It's not a leadership book, and that's really all I read today is leadership book. So letting you know I'm halfway through. There's my little tab right here, my little pink tab in there. So I'm getting through it. And but it's good, interesting stuff. And it's very interesting to me because of my lean background. The problem is I just really try to focus it. If it wasn't for me knowing you, I wouldn't be reading that book, but I am going to read it and I am going to finish it because out of respect for you as a person and what you're doing there. But I really just focus 100% of my energy normally on leadership development, personal growth. But to me, there's still a lot of leadership development and personal growth in that book. It's just in the context of process improvement. And anybody who understands personal growth and leadership development can read a book like that and kind of pull that stuff out of it. So tell us about that book, your mission, your journey, and first of all, tell people, because a lot of people don't know what Scrum is. That's a strange word to a lot of people when they hear it and don't know anything about it.
Yeah, so let me paint the picture. So Scrum, like if you go out to your favorite search engine and try to get a definition, you get all kinds of weird definitions. Probably as many funny ones as we do for when people look up what lean is. But it's a process and a mindset of tools and philosophy that allows teams to come together and we create high performance teams to the level that you're producing a throughput that's 2 times or greater than what you had before, no matter what industry you're in, no matter how big your team is. And where some of the inspiration for Scrum comes from is the human body. So the founder of Scrum, Dr. Jeff Sutherland, one of my heroes and mentors, that also wrote the preface to my book, which you're holding in your hand. And I know you read Dr. Sutherland's preference.
Yeah.
And he even talks about Felipe volunteering in that forward, because I told you all, just say yes. Scrum allows teams to come together for a goal. Everything starts with a goal. Just like we learned, it starts with the end in mind. What are we trying to achieve? And then from that goal, we make the work visible because it's based on lean production and the great principles from companies like Toyota and the Toyota production system. So we make the work visible. We put that work on this fancy thing called a backlog or a wish list. And then from there, we'll come to our list, and at periodic times, we'll prioritize it and carry out into a sequence of time, which we call the sprint, some portion of that wish list to work on in a given duration, which is very often 1 month or less. And many teams operate in 5-day cycles. So Monday through Friday, super easy, right? So you with me now? And then that, what we're going to do Monday through Friday, we prioritize it. There's a couple of special roles in the team, And you can listen to everything I'm explaining in far more detail by reading or listening to Chapter 9 of Construction Scrum, available at constructionscrum.com. Super easy to remember website. And I give away on that website my very favorite chapters for free, including a podcast episode where I read Chapter 9, the Scrum Guide, with commentary from me for construction professionals.
Outstanding.
Right. So if you want to know like how this can adapt to us in construction, just go right to Construction Scrum. Man, look at Ria's on top of it.
She's on fire, man. She's listening. She's back there making it happen. She just like me wants to help you be successful.
Yeah, thank you, Ria. This next sip is for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the reason that, we invite people like you. We want people who want to help us help people have a better life at home and at work. And you do both.
Yeah. So and I love Scrum so much, Mac. And people often ask me like, what is it and how can I get started? I created a free 30-minute course, which if you're really high achiever, you could probably finish it in 20 minutes, but give it a little bit of space. I'm going to a full 30 because you need some time to let the concept sink in a little bit.
Got to marinate.
So on constructionscrum.com, you can get to the free course or follow me on social media. It's on my store. It's very prominent to take my free Scrum course. And when you do, it'll unlock flow for a lot of people because as we learn in manufacturing and in construction, there's a couple of different things we can optimize for. One is flow and the other is resource efficiency. And in the United States and in Western management, there's an overemphasis on maximizing resource utilization. And when we do that, we create batches, queues, waiting, waste. Those are all types of waste. And I was even talking to some healthcare people in the beautiful state of Illinois, which is where I was born and raised.
Okay.
Down in Bloomington. Shout out to Carl Health. We were out there at a Boldt Company event teaching some basics of lean project delivery. And we were talking about resource efficiency. And we had some designers in the room, Mac. And I said, designers, one of the ways that I grade healthcare systems and how they're designed is by the size of their waiting rooms. The bigger the waiting room, the worse performance this is going to be from the customer's perspective. The smaller the waiting room, the more I know that there's a hyper focus on patient care. I was like, you can talk about patient care, but when I look at your system and observe it, I can see if it's really prioritized.
Yeah.
It's from the patient's perspective. If I put a camera on the patient's arm, up here on the shoulder, or put one of those GoPros on their hat and watch that camera footage back and just watch the time that they're actively engaged in something versus waiting for something to happen, that's going to create a percentage of being utilized or not, or waiting. And typically in industrial engineering, the common metric for efficiency and that simple formula for positive utilization versus not is just 25%. So you just got to be 25% of the time engaged in some value creation activity to be considered efficient, which when you listen to it, you're like, if I had an hour or, I'm going to be lazy, do lazy math. If I was doing something for 10 minutes, if 2.5 minutes I was engaged in value and 7.5 minutes I was just doing the wrong stuff or nothing, that would be considered efficient. That's how low the threshold is. It's super low.
Yeah.
And that's why in Scrum, when people get inside of the Scrum framework and start using it for how they work themselves, you can have a team of one, or you can have, your current project team. And we run the LCI community practice in Northern California, where I'm the chair as a Scrum team. And I also serve as Scrum Master to the national group, which you are a participant of as a keynote speaker, Mac. Like your activity of getting you to be the keynote speaker showed up on our Scrum board. And so in Scrum, we'll see in a lot of people that use Scrum will use Scrum boards. So go to the website, take the free course. There's some examples of Scrum boards, all the stuff we're talking about. You can get started today on this beautiful day if you wanted to. Whenever this goes live, you can get started. So I hope that answers the question. But at the end of Scrum, the punchline, Mac, is that you're going to start delivering much, much faster, much more reliable, with less hours, less effort, less frustration, all the things that we love, why we use Lean.
Yeah.
And it's all based on a Lean foundation. So it's all based on a Lean foundation that your human body does. Oh, I forgot to go back to where is this happening in the body? So in the body, you have different types of cells that have special functions. And when Jeff was studying cancer and how the information flows in cancer cells and how they get fed, and he was looking for ways to eliminate cancer when he was doing some research.
Yeah.
He found that you got to pay attention to two things: what's actually happening and what information is flowing so that the things are happening. So systems thinking with feedback loops. And that's the part of the magic of Scrum, because a lot of teams, Mac, as you know, in the natural everyday of working, never pause and look at how are we working.
Yep.
Unless you or me come into the play, and then we're definitely gonna we
can't help it. We're gonna be looking.
We're looking.
Hey, why are you doing that?
Exactly. And don't ask people like that. You got to ask with humility, humble inquiries. Mac's just doing it for effect. I know he's not going to put anybody in blast.
Yeah, we don't. I'll start saying, tell me what's going on over here. That's the way I actually do it. Tell me about something. Tell me about this. Tell me why you're doing that now, or tell me why you did that second, or tell me why you're doing that before. Because a lot of times when you ask like that, when you say tell me, a lot of times people ain't thought about why they doing it in any specific order. A lot of times they're not doing it in any specific order. That just happened to be what they're doing at the moment. And when you start hearing those kind of answers, you really start to realize the opportunity for improvement. Like you said, you basically can 2x or greater by learning to apply Scrum. I mean, that's 100% or greater improvement. When you're talking about 2x, that's 100%, folks. Don't let the little 2 number dilute that it's 100% improvement when you say 2 times. But most people understand that, but a lot of people don't even think about that either. They hear 2 times as much, but 100% is really a big way of saying it. So, and I know the answer, but I want you to share with the audience. But this what you're talking about, it applies to electrical construction, mechanical construction,
absolutely,
the plumbing side, all of it, all of construction,
every trade. And I've had so people that I've gotten a chance to work with and turn on thousands of teams. Some of the people are from the design side, so we have architects, engineers. I've even done full Scrum transformations with some engineering companies in different parts of the United States. Enclosure consultancies. One of my friends, Brian Melcher. Shout out to Brian, my best friend, who's on vacation right now, so he's not going to be watching this.
That guy's on vacation, taking it easy, recharging his battery.
Because he runs his whole company with Scrum.
Yeah,
we did a full Scrum transformation, and they more than 3x'd the revenue with the same people, Mac, the same people, in a much more reliable process. And we're going to do a case study on Brian at Field Verified and his whole crew, nearly 20 people. And I'm now, disclaimer, I'm a board member. So I was so helpful that Brian's like, you just need to come onto this board. I was like, Brian, you ask me like that, it just sounds so appealing. Yes. I was like, I don't need to think about it. Yeah, we love it.
So I know Rhea's in the background listening, so we didn't have this up, but she can put it up in a second. But you probably know it right off the top of your head. But what's the LCI website? I know you'd already talked about that, so let's make sure that Rhea gets that up. So can you pop that out?
Absolutely. leanconstruction.org is the Lean Construction Institute website. leanconstruction.org, and it's LEAN and then the word construction spelled just like it sounds, with no spaces. And there's a ton of free stuff. They've even got that's it right there. Thank you, Rhea. They've got posters now that you can download. You can create a My LCI account for free. There's some stuff that you can access right away. There are white papers, a blog. They also sponsor my podcast, Mac. Did you know that? The LCI sponsored my podcast?
I didn't know that, man. You big leagues, because for people not listening, that's not a little organization. Like when we spoke, I think there was, you know better than me, but I think y'all said there was like 1,700 people out in the audience when we spoke that time from all over the world.
We had people in over 14 countries, almost 2,000 people in the audience. And I love that even up 60%, we did a show of hands at one point in the big room. About 60% of the audience was brand new, first time ever to Congress. And LCI has north of 20,000 members, hundreds of membership companies. I can't even keep track of like all the numbers and what they have. So I'll do no justice to the right numbers. And if you're listening from LCI and where this is being streamed, I mean, just correct me in the comments. Right, Mac? That's where they should go. Put some comments in. Just say thank you. It's not going to kill you. I was talking to somebody from LCI on Friday, because we're looking to get more involved, because we can't say yes enough. Yeah. So yeah, follow me on social media. You'll see we're posting events, and we're having live events in California, and there are different communities of practice across the country that have live events, and ours, Mac, is the oldest. We're the first community of practice, and I just recently took over in January.
Okay.
We've already grown. I think our list has just increased north of 200 people since January, and we have been selling out every single event. So like if we cap it at 30, we get past 30. We cap it at 50. Always get like a couple people on. I'm like, you people that come to these things for free and don't pay, I know who you are, and I like your style. But we'll come back to you. I'll send you the invoice. But I like that people show up, and we have 17 volunteers, Mac, making that happen locally.
Wow.
Yes, we're very interested in this stuff. So all the stuff we've talked about so far is free. It's in the public domain. And I know, Mac, you also give a lot of your content away for free. And
tons of content.
Your podcast, like I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna plug Mac for a second because it's your turn. I'm gonna plug. I can't help but plug you. When I talked to Mac, and in his book, Kaizen Leadership, somehow I got onto talking to him, and he mentioned this episode for how to do a book study. And he had a podcast episode that laid out how to do a book study in a very simple way. And Mac even opened up with his friend Jason, and I got to go to participate in a couple of Teams calls.
Yeah.
To see how to do this book study, what it looks like in real life.
Yep.
With people. And I got to say, for study action teams, like if you want to level up a group of people, there's nothing better than a book study. And there's the link. Rio's like on it right now, like magic.
Yeah.
And that book study way, Mac, that is exactly aligned with how I was studying Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People with my at the time he was 12 years old. My son, who's now very, very well adapted with making friends and using the principles correctly. So when I saw that and you put it down just so simply, people, you got to check out that episode that Mac has there. Use that with your teams. There's no better way. I mean, that is the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's, our biggest client segment is construction. And I always tell people want to know what are your best clients do. And that's what they do. And that's actually episode 305. If you're a car person, think of a 305 small block Chevy, you can remember it. But if you go to the books, bluecollarleadership.com/book study training, you actually can see 4 different groups send in some testimonials and they didn't send them in for that, but they were just sending them in, telling me they were getting results. And I asked them if I could use their use their email as a testimonial. So over time we created that page. And so thank you for sharing that. That is it's a big deal. We actually learned that concept that we teach in episode 305 in 2013 in Guatemala with John Maxwell, when we were down there training 150 of us, paid our own expenses, went down there to train 20,000 leaders in just a couple of days. And we were teaching them that concept, and I learned those principles. And that's what you've been talking about a lot, is relative to Scrum, is the principles of process improvement. And like you said, they spent 15 times trying to figure out how to do that, the face of that building, right? Or multiple buildings, I assume. Right. And took 15 times to get it right. Probably what they were doing, I don't know for a fact, but I know how it works a lot of times. Probably what they were doing, where they were trying to probably have to learn the principle. A lot of times people see the practice and then they try to put the practice in place in their organization, but the practice ain't the same. Practice don't work in every organization, but the principle that creates efficiency works in every operation, every process. So that's probably what they were really doing. They were having to learn how to unravel what the true principle was. And once they knew the principle and applied the principle, they got the results. And that's a lot of times people get mixed up on the practice and the principle. So you've seen a lot of places, you've been to a lot of places. Tell me, what's some
really right, Mac?
What qualities make a good leader, and what qualities make a bad leader that you've seen or you've witnessed or you've experienced, maybe even in your own career? We ain't gonna call out names unless they on the good side, of course. But what's some qualities you see, good or bad?
So I got a surprise to help me answer this question. I prepared some slides.
Okay.
I'm going to share my slides right here on camera. So those of you watching, if you're just listening to the show, I've just held up a heart, that I've drawn on a simple note card. And to answer Mac's question, this is a real slide deck. You can see it's not just a couple of cards.
Yeah.
That I used recently to bring some of these principles to life. And I'm wearing a shirt that says respect for people on top, continuous improvement below.
Yeah.
I tell people we're only going to focus on the respect for people until it's sufficient at the right level before we start to improve anything. That number one is going to be respect for people. So for a good leader, I think a good leader has to have a strong heart. And by a strong heart, I just don't mean the ability to pump blood. I mean, you got to actually love. So to bring that respect for people in, you got to actually love yourself, number one. And then two, you spread that. That's going to overflow. And you're not going to be able to contain all the love for yourself, especially, Mac, you know how much I love myself. It's next level. Right? So then after that, then that's
not enough. Not enough. You've told me how you eat, Felipe, sometimes.
Yeah. This is true. It's true. I'm getting help for that, Mac. Then,
me too.
Yeah, I know. Mac and I, we were on the same kind of bacon diet. Like if we see bacon, we eat bacon.
Oh my goodness. I don't eat it like you do, but I want to.
No, you don't. No, you don't. One day you can aspire to grow up to be like me, Mac. So then we have the heart, and bacon's heart healthy, Mac. Don't believe the hype. Bacon is heart. Well, I got the heart in my hand.
Say it again in case Rio was blinking or something.
Bacon is heart healthy. Don't believe the hype. Saturated fats are actually very good and protective for your hearts and your arteries. And just look at the research, disconnect the hype from the science. You'll see it. I'm not being facetious. I'm being super honest. But for leadership, to answer your question, heart first.
Yeah,
and
man.
the other part of the heart is that you have to have courage to act in a different way. Because I was even talking about this with my son last night. I was like, you can be among the faceless many and blend in, or you can answer the call, step forward with courage, and lead. And you might be wrong and you might make mistakes, but you're going to step forward. And once you step forward, you're now half a step at least ahead of people. And some people will follow you, some people won't. You got to be follow worthy. You got to be leader worthy. Yeah. So I think heart is number one.
Yeah, that's a good point you made about the courage, because a lot of times, crazy as it is, it takes courage to care for people when most of the people around you don't. You know, that's what when we go in and we lead in cultural transformation in organizations, it's the people who have the courage to step up and stand out, step out front, and actually express that they care for the people in a world where normally that's not talked about and not, it's seen as weak a lot of times in the blue collar space. I always tell people real quick, Felipe, I don't want to take too much of the time that I got here with you, but you throw that heart up there, it just makes me want to talk for 2 hours, but I ain't going to do that.
Wow.
But we were just out in Kansas at Lean Electric, and we're going to have their owner on pretty soon. We're going to interview him in a couple of days, but he's actually going to be on fairly quick. And because I just want, why his story is fresh with transformation, I want to get him out in front of everybody. He's fired up because he discovered my stuff about 6 months ago, and then he brought us out last week. But when I'm trying to cut that ice and break the ice, I should say, with the folks fairly early on, because a lot of people think this stuff we're talking about, you show the picture of the heart. A lot of people think that's that warm, fuzzy stuff. That's the soft stuff everybody's talking about. But there's nothing soft about changing your character or transforming your organization. That's hard. What I always ask people, though, is I like to take people to the extreme to make it simple and easy to understand. I say, if you could walk into 2 doors every day, you got to pick which door you walked in, which was the door to a company. You can work in 2 different companies. One's on one side of the road, one's on the other side of the road. Everything's identical, pays identical, benefits. Everything's identical, except for one door you walk through and the leaders actually care about you. They love you as a person. You go through the other door, they don't care about you. They make it obvious. They don't care about you as a person. They ain't there for you. They're there for them. Which door would any normal thinking human being walk through? The door where people love them, or the door through people hate them? Everybody knows that. So that's one way to get people to nod in their head and understanding the power of love in an organization. It don't mean you got to go around hugging on people, bringing them flowers. You can if you want to, but most blue collar guys probably going to punch you in the mouth if you bring them some flowers. But that's good stuff. So you got any other? Oh,
I do. Got that whole slide deck in front of me. So then the other thing, like you said, on the process. So a lot of people see this process. I've got a simple 3-step process, 1, 2, 3, action 1, action 2, action 3, and it ends in some piece of work being achieved. We call a milestone in construction. And I'm just calling this milestone ABC. When I work on 1, I get part of A done. When I work on 2, I'm getting B done. And I work on 3 for C, and all together comes together. So there's a lot of ways to take that process. And just like Max said, people will see, and you are not wrong about that, that implementation. People see this and they're like, oh, I'll just do this. And I got it. Now, what you don't see on the card is what kind of principles you need to have in, or what philosophy you need to have to make this process flow from 1 to 2 to 3. Because in reality, if you map this in any given work stream or set of companies working on a construction site or in design, what you're not going to see is an arrow flowing into the subsequent tasks. You could probably even see 3 tasks going in 3 different directions that maybe randomly at some point get some part of ABC done, but not at the level that anybody wants. And that's just because people rush to follow and copy process to be busy. It goes back to that resource utilization. We've been conditioned, and especially in the United States, to be occupied and to be busy. We don't like to see idle hands, and even just the phrase idle hands sounds really bad. And we've even been learned since we're small kids, depending on what schools you went to, that idle hands are where the devil gets you.
Yeah.
This is not the case. Like idle hands, sometimes I could be like observing something. So idle hands means my eyes are engaged. Take that, devil. Not today. Not today, devil.
Yeah. So, even in lean, man, I mean, when you talk about the acronym downtime, with the 8 wastes, I mean, W is waiting.
That's right.
Sometimes it is a waste, but sometimes it ain't a waste. You got to understand, like you said, the principles. A lot of people should wait to do something. Like, a lot of times not waiting, getting busy to start some partial processing. Then they have to come back and reprocess to do the next step that they could have just waited and done it all more efficiently. But because they don't wait because they want to be busy, they're adding extra work, extra process. Sometimes they have quality issues, and instead of having 1 bad piece, they have 100 bad pieces, that sort of thing. Right.
That's right. Those errors will multiply if you don't stop, pause, observe, and see what's going on. You have no chance of making it better. And a lot of these improvements don't cost anything. You don't need fancy equipment. I remember that story you shared about setting the work at the right level for the employees so they could eliminate stepping up and down from the step stool, and how violent that individual could have been. There was a threat of violence for sure.
Oh yeah, he want to cut my throat.
Yeah, he's going to cut Max's throat. I mean, this is the part of the people side that I think that Maxwell in his laws really lays out. Like, how can you influence people, especially in a leadership capacity? Because influencing is one thing, but then working to influence in a leadership capacity is a special type of influence. So I really like in those types of rules, those laws, that if you put them into play, it's going to be transformative. So like even in when I work with teams, so this was true, like these little basic slides that I'm carrying around with me. I was working with the team, Mac, in California, and they had, through a series of really complicated things, complex issues, had gotten themselves into a very low trust environment where people did not trust each other. And so since I'm fresh off of blue collar leadership training, and I consider myself a Mac Story disciple, follower.
You are, man.
Yeah. I put into play, like, what's the biggest issue this team's facing now? And then I let people articulate it. So we made space for people to articulate the issue, not in a way that it was just like a complaining session. Because a lot of people like this, the soft side, the not valuable side. But if we don't acknowledge, what people are going through, call a spade in a healthy way, and have productive conflict, we can't make progress or change. We're doomed to stay exactly the same. And so by making that space, and it took, we had 45 people in the room, Mac. It took a good 3-ish hours to let people air the dirty laundry and talk about it. And the client was in the room. The client was there, so the client got to see the dirty laundry. Now, this is a project where the client wants this type of engagement. It's an integrated project delivery style contract method, which is very unique in construction versus the traditional design, bid, build, hard bid. And so the client was part of this, and they had dirty laundry too, and they were frustrated too. So everybody had their piece. But then after we did that, Mac, in less than 18 minutes, we defined that milestone ABC for a scope of work that's worth over $800 million.
Wow.
We could describe as a team what we're going to deliver, the end, beginning with the end in mind, in less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. And I'll say you apply the lean principle, which is also a leadership principle, and you already know what it is, but just to the audience listening, what Felipe just described was slowing down to go fast. You slowed down, listened. Not only did you listen, but you facilitated or everyone else listening to each other until they felt understood. In my book, Blue Collar Kaizen, the one you've been talking about, that's I got a story in there where I had to do that for 2.5 days out of a 5-day week. You remember that story? Had the 12 top leaders in there of this company, and they were just going at it, and I had to let them go at it till I got quiet. But it took 2.5 days because they were blaming each other. They were pointing fingers, and I knew they were going to do that to begin with. But most consultants would have come in, tried to take over and take charge, and nothing would have happened that week. But I did exactly what you did, except for it took 2.5 days, and I hardly did anything except facilitate that discussion until it got quiet. And up until that moment, they kept saying, "There's nothing we can do. We've tried it over and over, over and over. We tried it for years. There's nothing better we can do." And basically, after 2.5 days of them saying that, I said, "Hey, let's pull the PowerPoint up. Let's put a big slide up there that says there's nothing we can do, and we'll call the owners in here and present our final presentation." And they're like, "We can't do that." And I said, "Well, what can we do?" And after 2.5 days of the understanding piece and me doing what I just described, they spent the next 2.5 days figuring out what they actually could do, and they come up with a great plan. And most of my events were not planning events. That one was, but most of mine were, make it happen. By the end of the week, Thursday, transform the entire organization, a process that we're focused on. And just for anybody listening from the lean space, that's that book is not about the lean tools. It's all about the respect for people. Like Felipe saying on his shirt right there on the top line. That's why I don't do the lean continuous improvement anymore, because I figured out respect for the people, what I call leadership development of the people, all the people, from front line to top level. True respect for people is development of the people. And
100%. And Mac, what you're saying is that really resonated. And you and I, like, once we started tangoing together, like, we've never stopped dancing together because we're on that same thread, that philosophy, that belief. Mac and I believe, if you can't tell, underneath what we're all talking about, we have this crazy idea, or this idea has got a hold of us, Mac. And that idea is that we can improve. We absolutely can. We as individuals can improve, and we can improve processes with people working in other processes and organizations. Because some people, like Mac's saying, some people think incorrectly, from our perspective, we're biased based on our experiences. But some people believe that change is not possible and that they can't make the change happen. And we just are the complete opposite. And I'm so open to the change happening that I use this hashtag changemakers on a lot of my social media, because I'm showing people with that hashtag, here's an example of a change. Here's an example of a person making change. Here's an example. So I'm just putting all these examples out there. And Mac, yesterday I was running not a podcast, but a online learning event. I had 100 leaders that are all working for Kaiser Permanente. They're a large healthcare builder in the West, and they've got they even have like this offshoot in Atlanta. I don't know how they ended up in Georgia, but they're all over the West Coast, and then they're in Georgia as well. So you're like shaking your head because you've probably seen their facilities. And we were broadcasting. We had 100 construction and design leaders on contractors and owners, and they wanted to learn about TACT and how TACT, T-A-K-T, is being used in construction. And I've showed some case study examples. And I told them, I said, now I'm showing you these. I got these case studies like summarized and boiled down to the numbers. And I'm telling all of you right now that you're asking me, you're going to ask me before I even start, prove that it works. And you want case study examples. And I'm going to tell you right now that these numbers don't mean shite, as they say in Scotland, Mac. They don't mean anything, but some of you are going to want them. And I was like, that's not what you need to focus on. I was like, let me tell you a story. And I shared a story. And I said, now I share the story. Here are the numbers. The numbers aren't going to convince you. The story I just shared just made it real. And even when you read the case studies, as well written as they are, because I wrote them myself with real people, Those transformations are not it. What people hear and connect to is that we had a problem, we tried something different in a controlled way, we got results we wanted, we do it again, we do it again, we iterate. That's what you need to hear. That's the recipe for change, is that recognize that you've got, and there's, different types of problems depending on how your training is, but you've got to take action. It's not enough to recognize it and to complain. What are we going to do about it? Now that we understand and we listen, like, what's the problem when we're listening with our ears? What are we going to do about it? That's where Mac and I get more excited. So now we get to go play.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Felipe, have you read the book Rhea and I wrote together called Change Happens, Leading Yourself and Others Through Change?
I have not read that book yet.
So we give our guests a free book if they're in the U.S. where we can mail it to them easy. Would you like a free copy of that as our gift to you for being on this show?
I would love a copy of that book.
Yeah, I think you'll eat that book up. The Kaizen book and the Change Happen book, those two go together really, really well for Lean folks. So when we get done, if you just text us your mailing address, we get a signed copy in the mail and of Change Happens. Get that out to you. And for anybody listening, Blue Collar Kaizen and Change Happens. If you go to the Blue Collar Leadership YouTube channel, look under the playlists. We upload all of our audio, all the Blue Collar Leadership podcast audios are uploaded to our YouTube channel, audio format. But I went and created a playlist for all of the series. I do a lot of series on my podcast based on my books, where I talk about each chapter for like 20 or 30 minutes and kind of freestyle off of that. So those two books are part of the series. So anybody that wants to can go to the playlist, look for those titles, and right there, listen to the audio series. And those books are actually in audio format and also paperback and ebook. But that's good stuff, man, what you were saying. And, when I talk about lean with people, the biggest thing people are always saying is that they can't get buy-in and they can't sustain the gains. And the reason they can't sustain the gains is because they didn't get buy-in. And the reason they don't get buy-in because people ain't bought into the leader's vision. So the root cause of all of it is always leadership development, because leadership, as John teaches, is influence. So if you can't get buy-in, it's because you don't have influence as a leader. If you can't sustain the gain, it's because you don't have influence as a leader. And that's good stuff. So what can I'm going to read a question. I was reading a book today called from Warren Bennis called On Becoming a Leader, and he had a list of questions in there because it's a book based on a lot of interviews. It was written back in '89 originally, I think, something like that, or published. And he's got a list of questions. I hadn't got to the part where he's doing all the interviews, but I think he's going to ask these questions. And one of them was, what can organizations do to encourage or stifle leaders? So I'd like to ask you that, because that just seemed like a really good question.
Yeah, I'll pull it out there. Let's go with the negative first. So what organizations really often do to stifle leadership is that they forget, the leaders of the companies, don't realize that everything they do is being watched. All the people in the organization are watching everything they do, and people are very good at recognizing patterns. So if your leader has a pattern of saying something and backing it up with action, or what we call holding your commitments, we consider that a trustworthy leader. But if your leader has a pattern of saying stuff and not following through, the person is not going to be trusted. And we don't trust that leader. And that leader, they will get the time because of the authority where people will listen to them speak. But as soon as the leader's not there, people don't follow. They don't follow. And I've heard a lot of leaders, if you're a leader in a company and you're thinking, if my people would just if they would just follow our procedures, then you're in a low trust leadership environment and you need to call Mac Story because you need help.
We can help now.
You need help. And it's that thing, by not being consistent on actions and matching intentions and actions, when they don't match, create distrust, low trust, and you get people doing the best they can with good intentions. And good intentions might randomly give you some kind of results, or it might rob from the potential of your organization. And so that's a stifling thing. So if you're a leader and you're not sure about something, but you want to make a proclamation, it might be better for you to slow down, get sure on what you want, describe it out, and then also look at the next move, which we call second order consequence. What are you going to do to show that this is true? Like, how are you going to show action on what you've just proclaimed or what you've just asked for, what you've just done? If you can't connect your action to what you're asking for, you're not going to get the results that you want. People are not going to follow you. And it boils down to like basic things like trust, like being honest, acting with integrity. If you have a low integrity leadership team, and if you're concerned that your employees are stealing, somebody's probably stealing on your leadership team. And you're sending the message to all the people in this organization that stealing's okay, that being unethical is okay. And if you don't believe me, talk to any construction lawyer in the space, and they'll tell you that in law school, the most examples of case litigations that they look at, it's construction litigations number one above everything else. Don't believe the billboards driving around the highway. It's construction litigations number one. Every construction lawyer I've talked to says that the volume of construction litigation is exponentially more than the rest, because in these contracts, it's a very complex thing. And when people act poorly, it's to the tunes of multiple millions of dollars. Sometimes it can be billions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's where leaders, you've got to marry your words to your actions and keep those things coupled together, because everybody knows. Everybody knows. We know.
Yeah, we
know.
even, I always tell people, those leaders, they have those closed door meetings as if the secret doesn't leave the room when the door opens. when the people leave, the conversation leaves. It goes right with them, and they all trust somebody, and they're going to tell somebody, and guess what? Those people trust somebody, and then they trust somebody. So whatever's happening behind closed doors is only happening behind closed doors while the door is closed. As soon as it opens up. But when you were describing that, Felipe, you were going right back to that principle. You didn't literally say it, but you were talking about it. That principle of going slow to go fast. You was talking about that leader. Think about the commitment they're about to make. Slow down to go fast. Don't make the commitment if you can't keep the commitment. Because what I tell people is, when you make a commitment, you create hope. Then you got a choice. You can either build trust by keeping the commitment, or you can create distrust by breaking the commitment. So if you're going to make them, keep them. If you ain't sure you can keep it, don't make it. Just exactly. You got to slow down and wait and hold up, go a different direction. So that's awesome, man. Is there anything we hadn't talked about that you want to talk about? Any of your personal story or personal journey, or anything about your business or your company or you?
Yeah, I want to just share, when I showed this, the examples of these cards, I used a series of simple cards like I'm showing on the screen. We had that talk just to close that story down for folks.
Yeah.
After we listened to what were the issues, some of the people said, like, we know this. We know all these issues. And what you're saying about the closed door meetings. And I said, okay, you know the issue, but this person sitting to your left and to your right doesn't know the issue and doesn't have the context that you have, because you're doing this in closed door meetings. And we're not a team of individuals. We're a team. If we're going to be a team, we got to know as a team, see as a team, and act as a team, as my friend Jason says, Jason Schroeder. And so in that case, like, creating that space, now we can do things at a much higher level, because we were vulnerable. We trusted each other. It was safe to say, what the issues were in great detail, at the right level of detail, without blaming people or putting people on blast. The next thing that happened, in the span of less than 3 hours, we created a plan and a sequence of work for that $800 million worth of design and some early construction activities. We got to the point where we took that off of what we call the critical path and created space to do the work at a higher quality level in less time. And if you just do the straight math on it, it looks like it went from 16 months of activity that was producing, suboptimal results of like issues, quality issues, burning people out, working overtime, 16 months, working overtime bad, to this new process, 10 months, 6 months faster, where people had more time, better quality handoffs, and could work very smooth and steady at a sustainable pace. Almost to the point where people are like, they felt guilty. People felt guilty, Mac, for how much time they had in the new plan that was only total 10-month duration versus the previous 16-month plan. And I told people, I was like, it's okay. Some days you're not going to have a lot to do on some weeks. I was like, that's okay, but your handoff is going to be better for the person coming behind you. And we're not going to jump, over tasks. We're going to go on a nice, sustainable pace in 10 months. And that's created a whole cascade. So from the owner was in this meeting too. What happened about 2 weeks later in our big meeting room where we have almost 200 people in this room, the owner brought in one of the support people, and they warmed us up to do a safety moment. And the warm up was we danced. So imagine you like a month ago, Mac, you come into this space and you could feel the yuckiness of
the tension,
morale. And then within a span of a few weeks, we're all dancing together to funky music. It was funk. I think it was literally like Who's Got the Funk, which was awesome. And there's videos of this on YouTube. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see one of the owners like turn the camera, and I'm on camera for like 3 seconds. You just see my leg kick up, and you're thinking, like, what is he doing with his leg?
He's about to take off.
About to jump and hit the ceiling. But that's the type of transformation that can happen so rapidly. And people had even like one of my friends even challenged me and said, like, you're just one person. What could you do? And I said, I could do so much. And because I'll find all the people that want to do something.
100%. That's exactly right.
Mac taught me this. He talked about this leadership ladder. And I know where the inspiration came from with Maxwell's law of the lid. And Mac uses this great example. I should let you tell it about the leadership number and how you will only attract leaders within a couple degrees of you. You'll never be able to attract a leader above you, because
not for long. You may fake them out, but they won't stay because they're gonna have options once they figure out they got fooled.
That's right.
That's when you hear the company, Felipe. That's when you hear people say, "Well, whenever we do get a good one, they won't stay." That's a sign you just fooled somebody, and they got in there and figured out what the truth was, and they got options, and one of them is to fire the boss and go find a new boss.
Now, I remember there was a company I was working with one time, Mac, and they were trying to fill an experience level position, and they had like a pool of candidates come through to get the second, third round interviews. And after that second or third interview, the candidates would decline, and they would just consistently decline. And people were like, it must be the job market. It doesn't make any sense, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I looked at who are they meeting with and what are they talking about? And I was like, okay, that's why. Because they could see like, oh, they were attracting through the written word a certain caliber leader. But once they came into the space, they realized that, oh, this leader's here and my leadership is here. I can't be here. And they left. And that position, that went on for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. What did that cost that company? So leaders, you gotta develop yourself. And if you're a leader and you stop reading books, you stop learning, you stop going to workshops, you stop developing yourself, you stopped all those things, and you think you made it, congratulations. You just fell victim to the arrival syndrome. And when you fall victim to the arrival syndrome, you got nowhere to go but down.
Yeah. Yeah. So the stuff you're talking about now, I just like to remind my listeners, I got a book for the top level leader to help them understand this, called Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high performance teams. And there's a link right there on the screen, bluecollarleadership.com/download. You can actually read the first 5 chapters. But one thing I've started teaching, Felipe, and you may want to share this around if you hadn't heard me say it or you hadn't thought of it on your own, is pretty powerful. But I help leaders understand that I used to call them brand ambassadors, but that was the wrong word. But I figured that out pretty quick. But that was just how I associated it. But I call them culture ambassadors. You know, how hard is it to attract somebody when you got to fill a position? How hard is it? It depends on what everybody who's already working in your company has to say. If everybody in your company, because see, every time when somebody's at a ball game with their kids or wherever, it doesn't matter, wherever somebody's at, and somebody says, "What's it like to work at XYZ?" As soon as they start answering, they become a culture ambassador. They about to tell somebody, they ain't going to talk about the physical work they do and how they bend a pipe or install some wiring or that kind of stuff. They're going to talk about the culture. Usually what determines what they say is their relationship with their boss. So that's the way I tell people, if you've got top talent lined up, you got resumes like Jason Denham out at Kilgore Construction in Texas, he's got a stack of resumes, high caliber, high impact, high performance people waiting. He's in the construction industry. He ain't got a labor shortage. His competition might, because he's stealing all the top talent from them, but he don't have he don't advertise for jobs. He don't have to do any of that stuff that most companies do, because he does all this stuff that I teach, and he uses our content, constantly to do it. And he was actually the first person I interviewed in this series, the real people getting real results. But the other thing that I tell people, you got to make sure that everybody already working in your company has got something positive to say about your company. You got to lead in such a way that's what's happening. But there's another piece that a lot of people miss, and it's that everybody who's ever worked there is a culture ambassador. And I'll ask the audience most of the time, I'll say, have any of you ever worked anywhere else? A lot of people raise their hand. I say, when you left that company, did you quit talking about that company, or you still talk about that company? People laugh. I said, oh, those ones laughing, they still talking bad about the company. That's why they laughing. And that's the way it works.
That's why I'm laughing right now, Mac.
Yeah, probably so.
Companies, 100%.
It's the truth. So a leader's got to lead so well. Once they figure this out, they got to lead so well that the people inside the company can compensate for any of the negative stuff of all the people who've ever worked at the company who are still talking about it. You got to, when you want to lead cultural transformation like Rhea and I help leaders do, you got to go. Most people don't want to create the kind of company that Rhea and I are trying to help them create. But what I know is the ones who do, I wouldn't want to be their competition, because they ain't got a chance. Not when these folks get going. Not if they're in their area. So that's good stuff, man. That's some really, really great stories. And that's why I like you so much, Felipe, because you got that core leadership component, personal growth and development, the principles on how to be a better person. That's how to lead people, how to build relationships. That's what makes you successful doing what you do. That's the key. That's the foundation. When we talk about, root cause, we always, in Lean, why? When it comes to leadership, a lot of times people on the front lines, that's where, everything they say rolls downhill, right? So the problem's always on the front lines, and everybody's always focusing on the front lines. But I always say, if the front lines are the problem, who's allowing them to be that way? Well, it's the leaders above. Okay, if the leaders above are the problem, well, who's allowing them to be that way? And it goes back to the law of the lid, like you were talking about. If you ask why all the way to why is everything the way it is, it always goes back to the top level leader. So if a top level leader isn't willing to look in the mirror and say that we are where we are because of the way that I am, then I ain't the person to call, because the leader's got to be a part of the transformation. And I'm sure you see that in the Scrum world. If the leader is not really engaged, the people can make some improvements, but the best people are going to improve themselves right out the door if the organization's not growing, but the people are growing. That's why it's got to be a holistic approach.
It absolutely has to be. I'm working with somebody now doing Scrum inside of the Boldt Company, an individual. And over the course of it's probably only been about 6 weeks total. They've already experienced a 2x in their productivity and throughput. And the funny thing happened, like this individual went from they were probably at risk to getting on an improvement plan. They were definitely at risk. In their own words, they would say they were at risk. Like things were not going well. And after they applied these principles and some of the things changed, and some of it's philosophy, like just that spark of hope that we can actually make things better.
Yeah.
And after that, in a few weeks, it's kind of funny. Like it's probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that individual finally got so much trust from the team because of how they were showing up and what they were doing differently, that they're now mentoring 2 people. Now,
outstanding.
Yeah, that's
good for you and good for them.
Right.
But think about what we just talked about, Felipe. What you just did using Scrum to help develop that person's mindset. That's what you're talking about, right? They had a shift in their mindset. Yep. But just imagine that one person. And imagine before you got there, if I met them out in town, said, hey, what's it like to work there? We talked about being a culture ambassador. What would they have said before versus what would they say now? Completely different conversation. And that's why you and I are on the same page. And I used to do the same thing with Lean. I just stopped doing Lean and just focused on the people and let folks like you focus on the people and focus on the Lean. But I just want to focus on the people side, because there's plenty of folks out there doing the tools and all that kind of stuff. But you're one of those rare people, and I meet a lot of Lean people, but very few of the Lean people really get the people side of Lean. They talk about it like everybody does, but they don't really, really get it like you do. and I get it that way. And so that's powerful. But that right there, what you just described. And it's because you're able to do what you just described because of how you value the person first. That's what allows you to be successful. That's why this is the respect for the people is the foundation. But that's how you transform a culture. And like you talked about, when sometimes you're waiting because you don't need to be acting. Sometimes it's okay to slow down, to go fast, right? And if people don't know what to do, well, what I do while I'm slowing down. If you don't know nothing to do, teach some leadership development. Listen to a podcast. Listen to an audio book. Watch a video on something. It could be competency based as well. But a lot of people who don't develop people don't even think about developing people when they're slowed down. Like a lot of construction, you know this better than me. But when there's bad weather, rainy weather, construction companies, they just pretty much shut down, or sometimes they half a day. It's a perfect time. It's a perfect time to develop some people.
Mac, I think that's worth pausing on for a second. Like, so a lot of construction projects, this is the most ironic thing. This doesn't happen in any other industry, from what I can tell. So on a construction site, if we have bad weather, we send people home, not to work, instead of letting the people come into the office out of the weather. I mean, of course, if there's a tornado, like take shelter. Yeah. We're not talking about extreme weather like that. But if you have weather that impacts your ability to work, we send people home for no pay instead of staying and then developing them. And so if I was running a company, and
I got to interrupt you, Felipe, and I hate to do it, but I don't want to lose it, because that moment, what you just said, one thing you just described respects the people, and one is disrespecting the people. That's what I heard. I just had to say that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so if I'm in an agreement with the company to come do work, and then the weather happens, it's outside of everyone's control, and you send me home, what are you telling me? Like, and this is why I think respect in our construction industry is so low, because we have so many things like that we just jump right over, don't even pay attention. Nobody even asks the question, like, is this right? Is this right? It's not right. It's not right. People are depending. A lot of the people that work in our industry, they need 5 days of work. They need that full paycheck to support their families. And when we don't create environments where those people can be successful, we lose them. So there's some statistics out there. I don't have the right numbers, but construction loses more people than it retains. And it's created a deficit. So we have a shrinking workforce. And that type of stuff just makes me upset. So yeah, I'm glad we're just putting my email up there. If you're also upset, send me an email at Felipe@leanebfc.com and tell me about a story. I'd love to listen. And Mac, I had a gentleman contact me on LinkedIn, and I put my phone number out there just like you do. And he called me, and I was driving back from this lean training, and his name's John. John's like, "Oh my God, you answer your phone." I was like, "Yeah, I don't have an assistant to answer my phone. Like, if you call my number, and at my LinkedIn profile, my phone number is right there. It's actually there in my contact info, more info."
You want to put it here or no?
Yeah, we could put it there. It's I don't want to make Rhea work, because Rhea's doing a great job.
Go ahead and say it though. I mean, she'll put it if she's able. If not, if you want to put it out there, man.
Yeah, it's area code 916-871-4556. We'll see if Rhea got that. We're gonna test you, Rhea, see if you got it. If you want to, you don't have to. Oh my gosh, you got it. 916-871-4556. Yeah, if you call that number, I actually answer.
Hey.
Right? And if I don't answer right away, I'm probably talking to Mac, and I got to tell him we got to bring. We got to land this conversation, Mac, so that I can take this call that's coming in. But when John called, and we talked about a lot of different things about, things that he wanted. We even got into some philosophy stuff, Mac. But my point is, like, the disrespect that we have in many of the places we work is really too high, and it's unacceptable. And Mac and I just don't accept it. We've just decided that, you know what, it's not right. We don't like it, and we're doing something about it. And if you're out there and you're listening and you want to do something about it, it doesn't matter if you're on the front line or if you're the top of the top chief of the company, you can do something about it. We all have span of control, and there are things that we can do to make it better for everybody, including ourselves. You will also benefit when you help. I asked my son, I was like, when's the time you feel the best? He's like, when I'm helping others. It's number one. I was like, that's hardwired in. Welcome to the DNA of the family, son. Welcome to the family of change makers, because you're one of them.
I like it. Hey, that's good stuff. And when we talk about that mirror and we put the mirror up in front of ourselves, we're talking about the company and the leadership of the company, what they don't do. It's the perfect time to slow down and go fast. Do some type of training, competency training, character training, some of both, all kinds of different trainings you could do. But for the people who work in a company where they don't want to work, where they do feel disrespected, when it rains and they send you home, don't binge out on Netflix and play video games. Develop yourself so that you got options. And it could be an option to become a leader in that company like you wish you had. Step up. But also it could be an option to go work for a better company, because a really good company only hires really good people. Everybody wants to work at the really good company, but everybody ain't qualified to work at the really good company. You got to have done some work on yourself. So a lot of times those people who are blaming the company for sending them home, they go home, waste their own time. And that's on them. That ain't on the company, what I do with my time off. So it's, we talk about how to lead better, how to lead others better, but also how to lead yourself better. So it ultimately the responsibility lies on us, right? And to become those leaders we wish we had. Absolutely. Felipe, I just love talking to you, man. Me and you are on the same page on all this stuff. There ain't no doubt about it.
No doubt. That's why we're friends, Mac.
Anything else that you want to share or talk about?
I think that's good. And for, people listening, definitely, give us some comments on this episode so Mac and I can see what you liked, what you didn't like. And we'd love for you to get engaged with us. Check out our books, check out our podcasts, and we love audience engagement because we know you're all paying attention. Like some of you have been listening to all of Mac's episodes and you never tap that like button. Let this be the first time you exercise your ability to use that finger and show Mac some love and give him some likes on this episode. Come on now. Don't be stingy with that thumb. You can use this finger or this finger. I don't know how you tap that like button, but you got to go ahead and hit it. If you're listening and you're driving in your car, listen to the show, get to a safe spot and then hit that like button.
Yeah. And if you're in the construction world and you don't know about Scrum, you got to reach out to Felipe. And I mean, he's telling you from experience, just like I know from my Lean experience. He ain't just talking. No matter how somebody who's never done Scrum or Lean, you are sitting on a gold mine.
That's right. We even had a friend at the EBFC show website, theebfcshow.com, has a blog. And I had somebody take my free course on Scrum. His name is Austin. And he published on LinkedIn, I took Felipe's free course. We had this problem in our site. And then using Scrum on this issue saved us over 70 days. 70 days. He went from 0 to Scrum Hero in 30 minutes.
Hey,
he tried something. And so I captured that story and I made a blog post of it to put it on there. Yeah, go to the ebfcshow.com, click on blog. It's not the latest blog. It's a couple blogs down, but it's a Scrum story of Austin using what he learned for free, because that's how much I care about it. Like, just take it. Just take it. And then, of course, I've got paid courses. If you want to get, much, much deeper, you can spend 2 days with me and you'll see what the difference is when you go. There's levels you can get into, right? But even at the highest level, it is transformative instantaneously. You're going to see these benefits and these changes. And it's using this lean stuff that Mac talks about in people development all the time. And the first thing is going to change your philosophy. If you don't believe that you can change, you're right. If you believe you can change, you're right.
That's so good. And, I want to tie back to something. I want to tie back to you literally, personally. I got to get there first. So what I want to say is, one thing I always teach and tell people, don't focus on becoming a person of success. Focus on becoming a person of value. Because if you'll intentionally become valuable, other people will automatically make you successful. So if you're somewhere in the construction industry and your company doesn't do Scrum, you've never heard about it, it's your opportunity to become a hero in that company and potentially other companies. And what I'm saying there is get Felipe's book, Construction Scrum. Call him. I mean, all his information is on the screen. If you're listening on the Blue Collar Leadership podcast, I'll put his information in the details. But reach out to Felipe. You learn, just like I learned Lean. I just started reading about Lean and I started applying this stuff in my little bitty projects that I could have control over. And then I became the Lean coordinator and the Lean manager. And then I became a Lean consultant and all that kind of stuff. Anybody in construction can do this. It does not matter what position you're at. You can learn this. Let's just say you're running a small crew and the rest of your company doesn't do Scrum. You learn how to do it and apply it into your crew. Your crew's going to get results ain't nobody else getting. And you're going to start to shine, and you're going to get opportunities. You may not take them, but you're going to have the option to go get promoted to where you can do it over multiple crews, or you could become a project manager. I mean, you could become an owner of your own company. You agree, Felipe? Is that the kind of stuff you can help people at any level become more valuable so that other people can make them more successful? You believe that?
100% true. 100. That's why it's so powerful that it's priceless. It's free. And Dr. Sutherland made this concept's free forever. It's all in the public domain. But it definitely, there's some challenges depending on where you are and what level you are. And luckily for you, I answer my phone. So if you get stuck, you could just call and we'll talk about it and get you through it. And Mac, you've inspired me so much that in our Lean Construction Community Practice in California, we're going to start doing some live streams throughout the year to give people some basic lean tips and tools. I would love to have you on as a guest. I'll put you on the spot right now to bring you and Rhea back to answer questions. And we can take one of these people leadership component parts that are fundamental to lean and target having like a 30-minute, here's the things you need to know for our community, our thriving, growing community in California, the best state in the world. I'm sorry if you live in one of the other 49 lesser states. And I grew up in Illinois. I'm born and raised in Illinois, and I've abandoned Illinois. And now I love, 350 days of sunshine. It is
that's nice. Yeah, I'd be happy to be on there. And I'm sure Rhea would too. I mean, I'd love to be on there. Anything you're doing, Felipe, I'd love to support you. Anytime you want to talk, interview stuff, all this kind of stuff, happy to do it because we are on the same page. And that's important. There ain't that many of us out there. There's a lot of leadership people, but they don't know much about lean sometimes. And there's a lot of lean people, and they don't know much about leadership. So when you can get somebody that knows about both, but I like to ask you this, and then we'll wrap up. But
go for it.
We could go all day, but I like to ask you if you've seen this, because my experience is most people who really love leadership, once they introduce to lean, they really love lean. And people who really love lean, once they introduce to leadership, they really love leadership. Have you seen that? I mean, the high achievers, like people who get lean for the right reasons and people who get leadership for the right reasons. If they introduce to the one they don't know about, they naturally latch onto it. Do you agree with that? Have you seen that?
I 100% agree. And, it feels like it's the north and south pole of a magnet. And once those two poles come together, they're interlocked and they're now on the journey together. And I would say I started off more on the process side of the lean stuff early on. And then at some point when I had excess capacity, I flipped into this leadership and leading people part. And I spend almost all of my free time, like you're reading leadership books. I spend almost all my free time reading psychology books.
Oh yeah.
And even personal psychology and doing personal transformation of myself to increase my skills and capabilities, especially when it comes to facilitation and just being among people in positive ways. And I think that those things, like you're on it, it's like a north and south pole come together. Once they lock in, it doesn't matter if you start on the North Pole or the South Pole, they're going to start
get close.
They get close and boom, they connect. And now those things are intertwined. So I'll even go back into some of the process things like value stream mapping, for example. And now with all the other development I've had with leadership, I approach value stream mapping completely differently. Like same steps, different approach. Even the way I describe it is changed. And so the two things are changing each other, the process and the leadership focus. And I think that you're onto something, Mac. And if you're out there and you're just hyper focusing on the tools, just look a little bit into leadership and watch that magnet pull you in and bam.
Yeah, that's connected. I think that's really what's going to be cool for me. It's one reason I appreciate you coming on the show today is I mean, a lot of the people I'm interviewing, I don't forget these interviews. There's going to be people in construction all over the place that I'll send them once this is released and I got that YouTube link, I'm going to send them this. I'm already doing it with all the other ones that I've got because I meet people, they need to hear this video. So I send them, this video. So I'll be introducing you to a lot of people, but it's a win-win. It's habit 4 from the 7 habits right here. We're doing it. There's lots of different other reasons. There's synergy. But what I'll just share with everybody real quick, if you into leadership development and you don't know about Scrum, dive into Felipe and his content. Let him be the other side of this equation for you. And for anybody who knows Felipe or is listening and they know all about Lean or they know all about Scrum, but they really haven't dove into the leadership component, especially if you're in the blue collar industries. Rhea and I have 34 books, and 7 of the books are in my blue collar leadership series. Go dive into that stuff, and you can go to the download link, bluecollarleadership.com, download, and you can read the first 5 chapters of 5 of my blue collar books. And there's a lot of others. There's over 100 pages of free content from multiple books out there. And there's a link to go get some of Rhea's books. And Felipe's been sharing about all of his free stuff and videos he's got. And he's got the podcast, got all kind of stuff. We marrying it together for him right here, Felipe. And
there we go.
2 folks who are on the same page for the same reasons right here in one spot. This is going to be a good episode when it comes out. One last call for anything you want to share before we wrap it up.
Yeah, the last thing I was going to impart to everybody is how much I appreciate being able to have these types of conversations that Mac and I are having. This is exactly how we talked for 3 hours on the phone one day. And then finally I said to Mac, I was like, Mac, I think you probably should go to bed at some point because it's pretty late from where you are. Like, I'll keep going. So if people that know and you see us going, like, I know Rhea's probably like reminding Mac in her nice ways, like, you got to stop talking to Felipe because y'all just going to talk forever. And that's how we
got another one coming up in 15 minutes. So actually a construction guy, he's in the trenchless technology, and Chad Cox. So we about to go interview him. We got 15 minutes to get ready for that one. So but we could talk all day about this.
Absolutely. Let's land it, Max, so you can get ready for your next one. And I super appreciate all of y'all listening, and don't forget, exercise those fingers, hit those like buttons for Mac.
Okay, one thing I got to ask you real quick. I forgot. It ain't going to take but a second for you to answer, but I want people to know because we touched on Lean LCI Congress. That's in San Diego this year in October, right? You remember the exact dates? Do you know? I don't remember.
That's right. It's the 3rd week of October, ladies and gentlemen. Come join us in sunny San Diego, and I will tell you exactly what day. It's going to be the week of October 21st at the beautiful town and country in San Diego, California. I will be there probably most of that week. The main Congress event is going to be on October 23rd and 24th. There's a learning day where I'm teaching a course on AI powered Scrum on October 22nd. So come check that out. That's going to be an event that you do not want to miss. How to use artificial intelligence with your Scrum to level up so you can get 5 times the work in 1/5 the time, Mac.
Hey, I like it. I was hoping you guys were going to do a blue collar leadership learning day. I was looking forward to coming to San Diego out there, but didn't make it cut this time. But I told some people, I think Jason and several of his team members, unless something has changed, they're coming out in San Diego. So I'm going to make sure, I'm going to tell them once they confirm they're going, I'm going to make sure to tell them to look you up, connect with you, and maybe take that day that you got. So send me a link. If there's anything, a link to that day that you got, whenever you get that, send that to me so I can send it to Jason if you'll text it to me.
Absolutely will.
All right. So I got to wrap it up because we got to get ready. We got to download this one and get ready for the next one. So thank you very much, Felipe, for investing some time with us this morning.
Thank you, Mac.
All right, folks. Hope you got value out of today's episode. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership Series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.